Next up at position number 7, we have a fight in the women's strawweight division, J.J. Aldrich versus Jeon. The favorite, Aldrich, came in at minus 167, with the comeback on Jeon at plus 137. I did place a 2-unit bet on the favorite Aldrich to win 1.20 units. Aldrich did win the fight, and the result was a profit of 1.20 units for me. J.J. Aldrich has 19 fights, including her amateur career, and she was on The Ultimate Fighter and lost to Tatiana Suarez, which is definitely no shame, as Suarez is a really, really, really good fighter. Aldrich is pretty good on the feet, and she's pretty good with the wrestling, and she's pretty good on the ground. Her opponent, Jeon, is 19 years old. She has approximately 4 fights. She's only been fighting since, I think, June of 2015, so about 2 years in total. And she has 0 fights in the UFC coming in. So, as usual, when there is a veteran versus a debuting fighter, the first place to start is that there's an advantage for the veteran. It doesn't always work out that way. Frequently it's the opposite way, but it is certainly a good place to start when thinking about reasons for betting, to go with the fighter that has UFC experience versus the fighter with 0 UFC fights. So, the way the fight played out was Aldrich just was a little bit better on the feet, and she has good counterpunching, and she just was the aggressor. And although Jeon was certainly game, and she did clock Aldrich quite a bit, and she did pretty well for her debut. But Aldrich was just a little more experienced and was able to win a decision. Jeon, again, being only 19 years old, she's got a bright future in the UFC, and expect to see her definitely beating up some girls going forward. So my bet on the favorite J.J. Aldrich, 2 units to win 1.20 units, did result in a profit for me of 1.20 units. Next up, at position number 6, we have a fight in the welterweight division between Zach the Barbarian Ottow and Kiichi Kunimot. Zach Ottow was the favorite at minus 300, and the comeback on Kunimot plus 245. I did bet on the favorite Zach Ottow 2 units to win 0.67 units. Ottow did win for me, so I profited 0.67 units on this fight. Zach Ottow has had 2 fights in the UFC. He came in and had an excellent fight against the veteran Josh Berkman, and earned a split decision in his debut. Next up, he came up against Sergio the Panther Moraes, who's a solid fighter, 2-time Mundial champion. He's got power. He's a little unorthodox, but Ottow did lose to Moraes in his second fight. Kunimot has been in the UFC off and on for a while, and he did come in with victories over Dutra Jr., Sarafian, and Richard Walsh. His 4th fight, he lost to Neil Magny, and he's a pretty good fighter, but he probably didn't deserve to win the fight against Dutra. He was losing that fight, if I remember correctly, and fortunately for him, his opponent got DQ'd for elbows to the back of the head. So my reasons for picking Ottow in this fight were the fact that he's pretty good on the feet. He switches stances. He's pretty smooth. His boxing is just all around good, and he's got pretty good wrestling as well, pretty good takedown defense, and just seems to be a solid fighter who kind of knows what he's doing in there. And I thought that he would be able to outstrike Kunimot on the feet, and that Kunimot would not be able to take him down with any sort of regularity. He could possibly get one takedown, but I didn't think that he'd be able to hold Zach Ottow down. As the fight played out, it was mostly on the feet. There were some ground exchanges, but Zach Ottow, with his stance switching, definitely just sort of pieced Kunimot up. Kunimot attempted a couple takedowns, but for the most part, Zach Ottow was able to fight them off and ended up with a split decision victory over Kiichi Kunimot. So the fight at position number 6, my bet on the favorite Zach Ottow, 2 units to win 0.67 units, did result in a profit of 0.67 units for me. Next up at position number 5, we have a fight in the flyweight division with Tim Elliot versus Ben Nguyen. Elliot came in as the favorite at minus 230 with the comeback on Ben Nguyen plus 180. I did place 18 units on the dog, Ben Nguyen, to win 32.40 units, and thankfully Ben Nguyen did get the victory, so I profited 32.40 units on this fight. Tim Elliott's been in the UFC, had a couple of stints in the UFC. He's a really good wrestler, and he has a Dominic Cruz-ish type of awkward movement stand-up game. And he did win the recent Ultimate Fighter and earned a title shot against Demetrius Johnson. And he did pretty well. He actually won the first round. He took down DJ a couple of times, and he showed that he has the skill to be a good fighter. Again, he's usually takes his opponents down and sort of just out wrestles them and grinds on them and just saps their energy and wins his fights that way. Ben Nguyen is a pretty darn good fighter. He has won all of his fights in the UFC except one. He did lose to Louis Smolka, and but showed pretty good scrambling ability there. Maybe not so good fight IQ. When the scrambling started to go his way, he kept at it and ended up kind of getting pounded by Louis Smolka, who's in fact the superior scrambler. But he did show, again, some pretty good skills in all of his wins, and he did show good heart and good scrambling ability in his loss to Louis Smolka. He has been knocked out a bunch of times, so that was a concern for me. But I decided to actually bet on him because I just thought that he had the far superior stand-up game and that there was a good chance that he would clock Tim Elliot despite Tim Elliott's awkward stance on the feet, and he'd just kind of be able to clip him and then take away his power, take away his cardio, and then either get on top of him and pound him out or knock him out on the feet. As the fight played out, it was a short fight, and Ben Nguyen hit Tim Elliot with a pretty good shot and got on top of him, got his back, and just choked him right out. So Ben Nguyen is looking good going forward. If he doesn't get knocked out and he doesn't try to out-scramble a better scrambler, he should be able to continue to do pretty well. And Tim Elliot also is a solid fighter, and he should be able to win some fights in the UFC with his wrestling, but definitely displayed a weakness for jiu-jitsu on the ground when he's in the inferior position. So my bet at position number 5 on the underdog, Ben Nguyen, 18 units, did result in a profit of 32.4 units for me. Next up at position number 4, we have a fight in the lightweight division between Damien Beatdown Brown and Vinc from Hell Pichel. Damien Brown was the favorite at -120 with the comeback on Vinc Pichel plus 110. I did bet on the underdog, Vinc Pichel, 18 units to win 19.80 units. Vinc Pichel did come through for me, so I profited 19.80 units for that fight. Damien Brown is from Australia, and he's pretty darn tough, and his skills are pretty good. Nothing outstanding in any real in any area. His opponent, Vinc Pichel, was on The Ultimate Fighter. He actually won 3 fights. He won the first 3 fights, I think, and then he lost his 4th fight. He made his octagon debut against Rustam Khabilov and got suplexed. Probably the most outstanding display of suplexes or suplex type throws since Dan Severn versus Anthony Macias. So Pichel did lose pretty badly in that fight, and he's been out for like a while. He had a bunch of injuries, and then he had some other type of issues going on. So it's been, I think, around 3 years since he fought in the UFC. My reasons for picking Vinc Pichel in this fight was that he was the far superior wrestler, and that in what I've seen of Damien Brown, he's able to be taken down and dominated on the ground. So what happened in the fight was a little bit unexpected. Damien Brown did come out, and he was very aggressive, and at one point he was punching his way and making Vinc Pichel back up into the fence, and Vinc Pichel did a really great job of throwing a right hand to the jaw of Damien Brown and ended the fight that way. It was a beautiful shot. So Vinc Pichel, despite being older and despite being out for 3 years, showed no signs of ring rust. In fact, he looked actually a lot improved on the feet. I expected the fight to play out more on the ground, but obviously Vinc has been working on his skills and showed excellent offensive striking, especially when backing up against the fence. So my bet on the underdog, Vinc Pichel, 18 units to win 19.80 units, did result in a profit for me of 19.80.